Lila Harper lived a simple life in Pine Ridge, a quiet little town surrounded by thick woods and rolling hills. She was a woman who didn't stand out in crowds. Her days were filled with ordinary things, cooking meals, helping her kids with homework, and tending to the garden that stretched along the side of their modest home. To most people, she seemed like any other wife and mother, someone whose biggest worry might be balancing the household budget or keeping up with laundry. But those closest to her knew there was something different about Lila, even if they couldn't quite put their finger on it. Her husband Daniel loved her deeply. He admired how calm she always seemed, no matter what happened. Whether it was a broken pipe flooding the basement or one of the kids coming home with a bad grade, Lila handled everything with grace. She had a way of making everyone around her feel safe. Yet despite all this, there were moments when Daniel felt like he barely knew her. It wasn't that she was secretive exactly. It was more that she rarely talked about herself. When asked about her childhood or where she grew up, she would change the subject or give vague answers. Over time, Daniel stopped asking. He figured everyone had parts of themselves they preferred to keep private. Their two children, Sophie and Ethan, adored their mother just as much as Daniel did. Sophie, the older of the two at 14, often tried to get Lila to open up about her past. "Mom, did you ever have a best friend growing up?" she'd ask during lazy afternoons. Or, "What was your favorite thing to do when you were my age?" Lila would smile softly and say something like, "Oh, I don't remember much from back then," before redirecting the conversation to Sophie's own interests. Ethan, who was 10 and still too young to notice these subtle evasions, simply basked in his mom's attention whenever she played board games with him or helped him build Lego castles. On the surface, the Harpers appeared to be the perfect family. They laughed together over Sunday dinners, took weekend trips to the lake, and celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes and balloons tied to chairs. But beneath the surface, there was an unspoken tension, a feeling that not everything was as it seemed. Daniel sometimes caught Lila staring out the window late at night, her face pale under the moonlight, lost in thought. Other times, she would wake up gasping from dreams she refused to talk about. These moments made him wonder if there was something weighing on her mind, something she hadn't shared with anyone. One chilly evening in October, the kind where the air smelled crisp and earthy, the family gathered in the kitchen as usual. Lila moved between the stove and the counter, humming softly to herself while chopping vegetables for spaghetti. Daniel sat at the table, scrolling through emails on his phone, occasionally glancing up to tease Ethan about his math homework. Sophie lounged on the couch in the next room, flipping through a magazine, her earbuds dangling loosely around her neck. "Dinner will be ready soon," Lila called out, her voice cheerful as always. She reached into the cupboard for a pot, her movements smooth and practiced. Then, without warning, she froze. Her hand hovered mid-air, trembling slightly. For a moment, everything was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. "Mom," Sophie said, noticing the pause. She sat up straighter, her brow furrowing. "Are you okay?" Lila turned toward her daughter, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired, I think." She placed the pot on the stove and leaned against the counter, closing her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, she looked normal, calm and composed, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Minutes later, as Lila stirred the sauce simmering on the stove, she suddenly dropped the spoon. It clattered loudly against the tiles, startling everyone. Before anyone could react, she stumbled backward, clutching her chest. Her face went pale and her legs gave out beneath her. She hit the floor hard, her body crumpling like a rag doll. "Lila!" Daniel shouted, jumping to his feet. He rushed to her side, shaking her gently. "Lila, wake up, please wake up," Sophie screamed, dropping her magazine and running to the kitchen. Even Ethan abandoned his homework, his eyes wide with fear. "What's happening? Is Mom sick?" Daniel pressed 2 fingers to Lila's neck, searching desperately for a pulse. "Call 911, he yelled at Sophie, his voice cracking. "Now!" Sophie fumbled with her phone, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. Meanwhile, Daniel continued trying to revive Lila, performing CPR as he had learned in a first aid class years ago. Tears streamed down his face as he pumped her chest. counting aloud in a shaky voice. Ethan sobbed quietly in the corner, hugging his knees to his chest. The paramedics arrived within minutes, their boots thudding heavily on the wooden porch. They burst into the house, carrying equipment and shouting instructions. Daniel stepped back reluctantly, letting them take over. He watched helplessly as they loaded Lila onto a stretcher and wheeled her outside. The flashing lights of the ambulance painted eerie shadows across the walls of the living room, casting the family in hues of red and blue. At the hospital, the waiting room felt suffocating. Daniel paced back and forth, his mind racing with questions. What had caused Lila to collapse? Had she been hiding symptoms? Was it her heart? A stroke? He replayed the events of the evening over and over, searching for clues he might have missed. Sophie sat slumped in a chair, staring blankly at the floor, while Ethan clung to his father's leg, sniffling softly. Hours passed before a doctor finally emerged, his expression grim. Daniel's stomach sank as he approached. "I'm sorry," the doctor said gently. "We did everything we could, but she didn't make it." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Daniel staggered backward, gripping the edge of a chair to steady himself. Sophie let out a strangled cry, burying her face in her hands. Ethan started wailing, his small frame shaking with sobs. In that moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. Nothing mattered anymore except the unbearable truth. Lila was gone. In the days that followed, grief settled over the Harper household like a heavy fog. Friends and neighbors brought casseroles and offered condolences, but none of it eased the pain. Daniel struggled to keep things together for the kids' sake, though he felt like he was drowning inside. Sophie withdrew into herself, spending hours locked in her room, while Ethan became clingy, refusing to leave his father's side. Amidst the chaos, Daniel remembered something Lila had once mentioned casually during a conversation about organ donation. She had expressed a desire to donate her body to science after she passed away, saying it was a way to give back to the world. At the time, Daniel hadn't thought much of it. He assumed it was just another example of her selflessness. But now it felt like the only clear decision he could make. He contacted the local university's medical research facility, explaining the situation and confirming Lila's wishes. They assured him that her contribution would be valuable, helping advance scientific understanding. Though part of him hesitated to let go of her completely, he knew it was what she would have wanted. And so, with a heavy heart, he signed the paperwork, entrusting Lila's body to strangers who promised to treat it with respect. Little did Daniel know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything, not just for him and his family, but for humanity itself. The medical research facility buzzed quietly as Dr. Rachel Meyer prepared for her day. She was one of the lead pathologists at the university's science department, known for her sharp eye and meticulous attention to detail. Her colleague, Dr. Nathan Cole, joined her shortly after she arrived. Together, they reviewed the paperwork that had come with Lila Harper's body. It stated that the family wished for her remains to be used for scientific purposes, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual, however, was the lack of any prior medical records or history provided alongside the request. Rachel nodded toward the examination room. "Let's get started," she said calmly, though there was always a hint of curiosity in her tone whenever a new case came in. They wheeled Lila's body into the cold, sterile space and began the routine process of preparing for an autopsy. Neither of them expected what lay ahead. As Rachel made the first incision, her movement steady and precise, she noticed something odd almost immediately. Beneath the surface, just above Lila's abdominal cavity, there was an unusual firmness, a lump that shouldn't have been there. At first glance, it could have been mistaken for scar tissue or some kind of benign growth, but Rachel's instincts told her otherwise. She exchanged a quick look with Nathan, who leaned closer to examine the area. "What do you think?" Nathan asked, his voice low. "I'm not sure," Rachel replied. "But it doesn't feel natural." Using surgical tools, they carefully dissected the surrounding tissue until they uncovered the source of the anomaly. What they found left both of them stunned. Embedded deep within Lila's abdomen, near her spine, was a small metallic object no larger than a coin. Its surface gleamed faintly under the harsh overhead lights, and its design was unlike anything either of them had ever seen. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, swirling patterns that seemed almost alive in their complexity. Nathan reached for a pair of tweezers, hesitating before speaking. "Should we remove it?" Rachel nodded slowly. "We need to analyze it further. Whatever this is, it's definitely not human-made." With great care, she extracted the device from Lila's body and placed it onto a tray. Both scientists stared at it in silence, their minds racing with questions. Over the next several hours, Rachel and Nathan ran every test they could think of. They scanned the device using X-rays, MRI machines, and electron microscopes, hoping to uncover its purpose. But the results only deepened the mystery. The metal composition was unidentifiable. It didn't match any known element on Earth. The symbols etched onto its surface defied translation, appearing to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. And strangest of all, the device emitted faint electromagnetic pulses, almost like it was alive. "This can't be real," Nathan muttered, rubbing his temples. He paced back and forth, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. If this thing is extraterrestrial, how did it end up inside her? Did she know it was there? Rachel shook her head. "I don't think so. If she had, she would have mentioned it, or at least shown signs of discomfort during her lifetime. This looks like it's been embedded in her for years, maybe even decades." They spent the rest of the day poring over textbooks, research papers, and online databases, searching for any reference to similar cases. Nothing came up. By the time evening rolled around, exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them, but their excitement outweighed their fatigue. They knew they were dealing with something extraordinary, something that could change everything humanity understood about itself and the universe. The following morning, Rachel decided to contact Daniel Harper. As much as she wanted to keep the discovery quiet until they had more answers, she felt obligated to inform him. After all, this involved his wife's body, and he deserved to know what they had found. When Daniel answered the phone, his voice sounded hollow, still burdened by grief. "Dr. Meyer? Is everything okay?" "Mr. Harper?" Rachel began cautiously, unsure of how to break the news. "There's something I need to discuss with you regarding your wife. It's complicated." Daniel's heart sank. He braced himself for bad news. "What is it?" Rachel hesitated before continuing. "During our examination, we discovered an object inside your wife's body. It's not something we can easily explain. We believe it may be some form of advanced technology, possibly extraterrestrial in origin." For a moment, Daniel thought he misheard her. "Extraterrestrial? You mean alien?" "Yes," Rachel confirmed. "We're still analyzing it, but based on its properties, it seems highly likely. I understand this must be shocking, but we wanted to let you know as soon as possible." Daniel sat down heavily, his mind reeling. Alien technology inside Lila. None of it made sense. Was she aware of it? Could she have known? "We don't think so," Rachel replied. "From what we've observed, the device appears to have been embedded in her for a very long time without causing harm. It's possible she never even realized it was there." After hanging up, Daniel stared blankly at the wall, his thoughts spiraling. How could this have happened? Who, or what, had put that thing inside her? And why? The questions overwhelmed him. But one thing was clear: he needed answers for Lila, for their children, for himself. That afternoon, Daniel visited the research facility, driven by a mix of fear and determination. When he arrived, Rachel and Nathan greeted him warmly, guiding him to the lab where the device was being studied. Seeing it up close sent a chill down his spine. The metallic object looked innocuous enough, but the implications of its existence were staggering. "Can you tell me anything else about it?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. Rachel sighed. "Not yet. But we're working tirelessly to figure out its purpose. Based on its design and behavior, it might serve as some kind of communication tool, or perhaps a tracking device. Until we know more, we can only speculate." Daniel nodded, absorbing the information. He couldn't help but wonder if Lila's mysterious past held the key to understanding this bizarre discovery. She had always been reluctant to talk about her early years, brushing off questions with vague responses. Now those unanswered questions loomed larger than ever. As he drove home that evening, Daniel resolved to dig deeper. He owed it to Lila and to their family to uncover the truth. That night, he climbed into the attic where boxes of old belongings gathered dust. Among them, he found a shoebox labeled Lila's Things. Inside were faded photographs, handwritten letters, and mementos from her younger days. As he sifted through the contents, one item caught his eye: a worn ID badge bearing the words Project Horizon and Lila's photo. Beneath it was a handwritten journal, its pages filled with cryptic notes and sketches. Daniel flipped through the journal, his pulse quickening. Entries described experiments involving biological integration and warnings about potential risks. One passage stood out. They said it was safe, that it would protect me. But what if it's not protection? What if it's control? His hands trembled as he closed the journal. Suddenly, pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Lila hadn't just stumbled upon the device, it had been deliberately placed inside her, and whoever was responsible might still be watching. Daniel sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the dust swirling around him like tiny ghosts disturbed by his movements. The air smelled musty, tinged with the faint scent of old paper and forgotten memories. He stared at the journal in his hands, its worn leather cover cracked and faded. Each page was filled with Lila's neat handwriting, though some entries were smudged or torn, as if she had tried to erase parts of her own story. He flipped back to the entry that had caught his attention. Earlier, the one about Project Horizon, it mentioned experiments involving something called biological integration, but what did that mean? And who were they? The more Daniel read, the clearer it became that Lila hadn't just stumbled into this situation. She had been part of something far bigger than either of them had realized. As he sifted through the other items in the shoebox, he found a stack of old photographs. One picture showed Lila standing in front of a large building with a sign above the door that read, Horizon Research Facility. She looked younger in the photo, her smile hesitant, almost forced. Next to her stood two men in lab coats, their faces serious. Daniel didn't recognize them, but something about their expressions made him uneasy, as if they knew secrets too heavy to carry. Another photograph showed Lila sitting alone in what appeared to be a hospital bed. Her arms were covered in wires, and there was a machine beside her emitting soft beeps. The caption on the back of the photo simply said, Day 45, integration complete. Daniel's stomach churned. What exactly had they integrated? Was it the device they'd found inside her body? If so, why? Determined to find answers, Daniel turned his attention to the ID badge. It was laminated but scratched, as if it had been handled often. The name Project Horizon was printed boldly across the top, followed by Lila's full name and a barcode. There was also a location listed, Area 52, Nevada. Daniel frowned. He had heard rumors about secret government facilities in the desert, places where people claimed aliens were studied, or worse. Could Lila have worked at such a place? Or had she been a subject of their experiments? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He remembered how vague she had always been about her past, deflecting questions with polite smiles or changing the subject entirely. At the time, he had assumed she was just private. Now, he wondered if she had been hiding something far darker. By the time night fell, Daniel's mind was racing. He couldn't keep this discovery to himself, not when it involved Lila's life and death. He decided to share what he had learned with Dr. Rachel Meyer and Dr. Nathan Cole, hoping they could help make sense of it all. Early the next morning, he drove back to the research facility, clutching the journal and photos tightly in his hands. When he arrived, Rachel and Nathan greeted him with concern etched on their faces. They could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of sleepless nights pressing down on him. Without wasting time, Daniel spread the items out on a table in the lab, explaining everything he had uncovered. "This is my wife," he said, pointing to the photo of Lila outside the research facility. "And these are notes she wrote about whatever happened to her. I think this Project Horizon is connected to the device you found." Rachel picked up the journal, scanning the pages carefully. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as she read. "Biological integration," she murmured. "That term suggests they were experimenting with merging technology with living organisms. But why would anyone do that?" Nathan leaned over her shoulder, studying the sketches of symbols that matched those on the alien device. It's possible they were trying to create a hybrid, something that could bridge human biology with extraterrestrial tech. Maybe they thought it would give humans access to advanced abilities or knowledge. "But look at this," Daniel interrupted, holding up the photo of Lila in the hospital bed. "Doesn't this look like she was being experimented on? Like she wasn't a willing participant?" Rachel nodded slowly. "It's hard to say for sure without more context, but based on what we've seen so far, it seems likely she was involved in something highly classified and potentially dangerous." Over the next few days, the trio worked tirelessly to piece together the fragments of Lila's mysterious past. Rachel and Nathan focused on analyzing the journal's contents while Daniel scoured online archives for any mention of Project Horizon. Most searches came up empty, but eventually he stumbled upon a forum dedicated to conspiracy theories. Among the posts, one user claimed to have worked at a government lab in Nevada during the late 1990s. The description matched what Daniel had seen in Lila's journal. Excited, Daniel reached out to the user, introducing himself and asking for details. To his surprise, the man responded quickly, agreeing to meet in person. His name was Greg, and he lived in a nearby city. When Daniel arrived at the agreed-upon cafe, Greg was already seated, sipping coffee nervously. He was older, with graying hair and tired eyes. "You said you're looking for information about Project Horizon?" Greg asked cautiously after they exchanged introductions. "Yes," Daniel replied. "My wife was part of it, or at least, I think she was. Do you know anything about biological integration?" Greg hesitated, glancing around the cafe before leaning closer. "I can't tell you much, not without risking my neck. But yeah, I worked on a project like that once. They called it Phase 2. We were testing ways to implant alien tech into human hosts. The idea was to use it for communication or surveillance. Some of us thought it was unethical, but orders came from higher-ups. People disappeared if they asked too many questions." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. "Did you ever meet a woman named Lila Harper?" Greg shook his head. "Not that I recall. But lots of subjects passed through. They weren't volunteers, if that's what you're wondering. Most didn't even know what was happening to them until it was too late." Back at the research facility, Daniel shared Greg's account with Rachel and Nathan. Both scientists listened intently, their expressions grim. "This changes things," Rachel said, finally. "If Lila was abducted and used as a test subject, then the device isn't just a random artifact. It's evidence of something much bigger. Something sinister." Nathan nodded. "We need to figure out what it does. If it really is a communication tool, we might be able to activate it." Despite the risks, they agreed to proceed cautiously. Using specialized equipment, they attempted to interface with the device, sending low-frequency signals to trigger a response. For hours, nothing happened. Just as they began to lose hope, the device suddenly hummed to life, vibrating gently in its containment unit. A beam of light shot upward, projecting holographic images onto the ceiling. The room fell silent as everyone stared in awe. The projections showed star systems, alien landscapes, and humanoid figures gesturing in what appeared to be a form of communication. Symbols similar to those on the device floated in the air, shifting and rearranging themselves like a language coming alive. Sophie, who had accompanied Daniel to the lab that day, gasped. "What is that? Is it a map?" Rachel stepped closer, examining the star charts. "It could be. These coordinates might lead somewhere, possibly to whoever created this technology." Ethan, who had stayed home, later joined the conversation via video call. Though he didn't fully understand the science behind it, he recognized the importance of what they were seeing. "Mom would have wanted us to figure this out," he said softly. "She wouldn't want us to stop now." Inspired by his words, the group vowed to continue unraveling the mystery. Whatever secrets the device held, they were determined to uncover them, not just for Lila, but for everyone who deserved to know the truth about humanity's place in the universe. The lab buzzed with energy as the device continued to project its mysterious holograms into the air. The images were mesmerizing: star systems, swirling galaxies, and strange landscapes unlike anything on Earth. Alien symbols floated alongside them, shifting and rearranging themselves like pieces of an unsolvable puzzle. Everyone in the room stood transfixed, their eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Sophie stepped closer, her finger tracing the glowing patterns projected onto the ceiling. "These look like constellations," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "But they're not from our solar system. I've never seen anything like this before." Rachel nodded, jotting notes furiously on her clipboard. "You're right. These coordinates point to regions of space far beyond what we've explored. It's possible this device is some kind of map, or maybe even a message." Nathan adjusted the settings on the machine connected to the device, attempting to stabilize the holograms. If it's a message, then who's it meant for and why was it inside Lila? Daniel crossed his arms, his brow furrowed in thought. Maybe it wasn't just inside her. It was part of her. Whatever those people did to her, they must have been trying to use her as a bridge between humans and whoever made this. As the group discussed the implications, something unexpected happened. Dr. Rachel Meyer accidentally brushed her hand against the device while adjusting its position. In an instant, a surge of energy coursed through her body, causing her to stumble back. Her colleagues rushed to her side, but before they could ask if she was okay, she gasped, clutching her head. I saw something," Rachel stammered, her voice shaky. "It was like memories, but not mine. They were hers. Lila's." Everyone froze, staring at her in stunned silence. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked cautiously. Rachel closed her eyes, struggling to process what she had experienced. "It was fragmented, chaotic. I saw flashes of bright lights, strange beings, and pain. So much pain." She didn't understand what was happening to her. Someone took her, abducted her, and brought her to a place filled with machines and people in suits. They put the device inside her. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Sophie hugged herself tightly, tears welling up in her eyes. "They did this to Mom, without her knowing?" "It seems so," Rachel replied, softly. "From what I saw, she fought back at first, but then she forgot. Or maybe they made her forget. By the time she returned home, she had no memory of the event." Daniel clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his grief. Who are these people? Why would they do this to her, to anyone? What gives them the right? Nathan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We don't know yet, but we're getting closer to finding out. This device holds answers. We just need to figure out how to unlock them." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to decode the information contained within the device. Sophie proved invaluable to the effort, her sharp mind and passion for astronomy helping identify patterns in the star maps. She cross-referenced the coordinates with known celestial bodies, discovering that many pointed to areas of space associated with unexplained phenomena, UFO sightings, radio signals, and anomalies detected by telescopes. Meanwhile, Rachel and Nathan focused on deciphering the alien symbols. They noticed that certain sequences repeated themselves, suggesting they might represent key concepts or commands. Using advanced algorithms, they began translating bits and pieces of the language, piecing together fragments of meaning. One evening, after hours of relentless work, Sophie called everyone over to her workstation. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a cluster of stars highlighted on her screen. This matches one of the symbols on the device. It's a warning. A warning? Daniel asked, leaning in for a closer look. Sophie nodded. Yeah. Based on the context, it seems to say something about danger, like whoever sent this device wanted us to know there's a threat out there. Something big. Rachel frowned. A threat? To Earth? Possibly, Sophie replied. Or maybe just to anyone who tries to interfere with whatever this technology represents. The revelation sent a chill through the room. If the device was indeed a warning, then humanity might be facing dangers far greater than anyone had imagined. But why send such a message through Lila? And why embed it inside her body? As the days turned into weeks, the Harpers and the scientists grew closer, united by their shared mission. They spent long hours in the lab, fueled by coffee and determination. Slowly but surely, they began to unravel more of the mystery. The device not only contained star maps and warnings, it also seemed to serve as a communication tool, capable of transmitting signals across vast distances. One night, as they tested the device's transmission capabilities, it suddenly activated on its own. The holograms reappeared, brighter and clearer than ever before. This time, however, the projections included moving images, scenes of alien worlds, spacecraft, and humanoid figures communicating through gestures and symbols. Sophie watched in awe as the figures demonstrated what appeared to be instructions. "They're showing us how to use it," she whispered, "like they want us to respond." Daniel hesitated, glancing at Rachel and Nathan. "Should we try? What if it's dangerous?" Rachel sighed. "We can't ignore this. If this really is a message from another civilization, ignoring it could mean missing our chance to learn something incredible or prevent a catastrophe." After much debate, they decided to proceed cautiously. Using the translated symbols as a guide, they attempted to send a simple response. "We are here. Who are you?" For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, the device hummed again, and a new set of holograms appeared. The alien figures gestured toward a specific star system, followed by a series of symbols that translated roughly to, "Help is coming." The room erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Had they just initiated contact with an extraterrestrial civilization? And if so, what did "help is coming" mean? Was it a promise or a warning? As the initial excitement faded, reality set in. They had opened a door to the unknown, and there was no telling what lay on the other side. For now, all they could do was wait and prepare for whatever came next. Back at home, Daniel sat with Sophie and Ethan, discussing everything that had happened. Despite the uncertainty, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Lila's legacy was no longer one of tragedy. It was one of discovery. Through her sacrifice, they had forged a connection with the stars, bridging the gap between humanity and the cosmos. Ethan looked up at his father, his young face filled with determination. "Do you think Mom knew? Deep down, I mean." Daniel smiled sadly, ruffling his son's hair. "I think she carried this secret without understanding it, but she always believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. That's why we have to keep going for her." Sophie nodded, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We'll make sure her story matters, no matter what happens next." And so, the Harper family embraced their role as guardians of a startling secret, one that promised to change the course of human history forever. The days following the activation of the device were tense yet hopeful. The message, "Help is coming," lingered in everyone's minds like a promise whispered by the universe itself. But what did it mean? Who was coming? And why? These questions haunted Daniel and his family as they waited anxiously for something to happen. In the meantime, word of the discovery spread beyond the confines of the research facility. Dr. Rachel Meyer and Dr. Nathan Cole had initially tried to keep the project under wraps, fearing the implications if the public learned about the alien device. However, secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, especially when people start noticing strange occurrences. Lights in the sky began appearing more frequently over Pine Ridge, and whispers of UFO sightings reached local news outlets. It wasn't long before investigative journalist Mia Torres caught wind of the story. Mia was known for her relentless pursuit of truth, often uncovering scandals that others dared not touch. When she approached Daniel, he hesitated at first, unsure whether sharing Lila's story with the world was the right thing to do. But Sophie convinced him otherwise. "If we don't tell people, how will anyone know?" she argued. "Mom sacrificed so much. We owe it to her to share this." With Mia's help, the Harpers went public, revealing everything they had uncovered about Project Horizon, the mysterious device, and the potential contact with extraterrestrial beings. The revelation sent shockwaves across the globe. Social media erupted with theories, debates, and speculations. Some praised the family for their bravery. Others accused them of fabricating the story for attention. Amidst the chaos, one undeniable fact remained. Humanity now stood on the brink of something extraordinary. As the days passed, reports of similar cases began surfacing. People from all walks of life came forward, claiming to have strange implants or unexplained memories of abductions. Many carried devices identical to the one found in Lila's body. These revelations confirmed what the team had suspected all along. Lila wasn't alone. Others had been used as vessels for alien technology, unknowingly carrying messages or warnings from the stars. One such individual was Sarah Bennett, a middle-aged woman from Ohio who had always felt different but couldn't explain why. After hearing the Harper family's story, she sought out Dr. Meyer and Dr. Cole, bringing with her an X-ray showing a metallic object embedded near her spine. Like Lila's, it bore the same intricate symbols and emitted faint electromagnetic pulses. More followed, each case adding another piece to the growing puzzle. With the influx of new information, the scientists worked around the clock to analyze the data. They discovered that the devices weren't just communication tools, they were also monitoring systems designed to track biological responses and environmental changes. This led to a chilling realization. Whoever created the technology wasn't merely observing humanity, they were studying it, perhaps preparing for something far greater. Despite the uncertainty, the Harpers found solace in knowing they weren't alone. A network of individuals who shared their experiences formed, united by a common goal: to understand the purpose of the devices and protect humanity from whatever threats might arise. Together they exchanged stories, compared notes, and supported one another through the emotional toll of uncovering buried truths. Then, one fateful evening, the skies above Pine Ridge lit up with an otherworldly glow. A massive spacecraft descended, silently, hovering above the town like a second moon. Its surface shimmered with iridescent hues, shifting between colors that defied description. The air vibrated with a low hum, and a beam of light shot down, enveloping the hilltop where the Harper family stood alongside Dr. Meyer, Dr. Cole, and several others who had come forward with their own devices. From the ship emerged humanoid, figures taller and more slender than humans, their skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Their eyes, large and luminous, scanned the crowd with an expressionless gaze. Though they didn't speak aloud, their presence radiated calm and reassurance. Through the devices still embedded in the bodies of those gathered, they communicated, telepathically, their voices echoing gently in everyone's minds. "We are here," they said. "You called and we answered." Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Why did you choose us? Why put these things inside us?" The beings paused, as if considering how best to explain. "Your species stands at a crossroads," they replied. "The devices were meant to guide you, to prepare you for challenges ahead. Some among you were chosen because of your resilience, your capacity for compassion and understanding. You are bridges between worlds." Sophie clutched her father's arm, her voice trembling as she asked, "What kind of challenges?" The being's response was cryptic, yet urgent. "Great change approaches. Your planet is fragile, its resources finite. Without unity, survival becomes uncertain. We cannot intervene directly, but we can offer knowledge, if you choose to accept it." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. The weight of the decision rested squarely on the shoulders of those present. Accepting the knowledge meant embracing responsibility, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. Rejecting it meant turning away from the unknown, potentially sealing Earth's fate. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging within. Him, we'll take it. Whatever you're offering, we'll use it wisely, for her. He glanced at a photograph of Lila he had brought with him, clutching it tightly. The beings nodded, their forms flickering briefly before solidifying again. Very. Well, the path forward will not be easy, but you are not alone. Others watch, others listen. Humanity has allies among the stars. With that, the spacecraft ascended into the heavens, leaving behind a sense of awe and purpose. The devices within, the group pulsed once more, then fell silent, their mission seemingly complete. Whatever knowledge they contained would need to be deciphered carefully, step by step. In the weeks and months that followed, the Harper family became advocates for unity and cooperation, spreading the message of hope and responsibility. They worked tirelessly with scientists, governments, and ordinary citizens to prepare humanity for the challenges ahead. Lila's legacy lived on, not as a tragedy, but as a beacon of courage and connection. Though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: the stars no longer felt so distant. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming part of something greater, a cosmic community bound by shared struggles and dreams. And for Daniel, Sophie, and Ethan, that journey began with a single startling secret hidden inside the woman they loved most.